Hello, this is Math 18, Section 2.1. Today we're going to look at evaluating variable expressions. So first of all, whenever we're talking about quantities that we don't know the exact value of in mathematics, we use any letter of the alphabet called a variable to represent that number or that quantity that we don't know. So anytime we have an expression that contains more than one variable or just one variable all by itself, it's called a variable expression. Now, if you look at this expression down here on the right, we have 3x squared minus 5y plus 2xy minus x minus 7. Now, one of the things that you'll need to know is the different parts of the expression. First of all, there's 5 terms. Okay, they're grouped, separated by addition and subtraction signs. And then some of those terms are variable terms. So all of the ones that contain a letter, 3x squared, negative 5y, 2xy, negative x, those are variable terms, and the negative 7 is called the constant term. Now, one thing that's going to be different in this chapter compared to chapter 1 is that we are now going to let the minus sign also be the sign of the number behind it. So it now has two jobs. So if you look at 3x squared minus 5y, that means subtraction, but it also means that that is a negative 5y. So a subtraction sign means the number behind it is negative. An addition sign means the number behind it is positive. So that's a positive 2xy, a negative x, a negative 7. So you want to make sure you take the sign with the number behind it. It goes with the number that follows that sign. So look at these terms. What we just talked about, 3x squared, negative 5y, 2xy, and negative x, those are our variable terms because they contain variables. Negative 7 is a constant term, or simply a constant, because it never changes. It's always a constant. It's always negative 7. Now, in the variable terms, we have two parts. We have the numerical coefficient, which will mostly just be saying coefficient, and the variable part. The variable part's the easy part because that's the letters. So if you look at the expression down here, the same one that we've been looking at, our coefficients are 3, negative 5. So you have to take that sign with the 5, positive 2, and now this is one thing. We just had negative x when it was written earlier, but it's understood that there is a 1 in front of every variable that's written all by itself. So in other words, if you have 6x minus y, that is a negative 1y. That 1 is written there. It's usually not written. It's understood to be there. So just make sure you realize that the coefficient on that x term is a negative 1. And then our constant term, negative 7. So look at this expression we have here. 2a squared minus 5a plus 7. It says to name the variable terms of the expression. Well, the variable terms, I'm just going to make this a, b, and c, and we'll write the answers down underneath here. The variable terms would be 2a squared negative 5a, because that negative sign goes with the 5. And those two terms have variables. Those are our variable terms. Part B says name the coefficients of the expression. Well, the coefficients are the numbers that are in front of variables. So that would be 2 and negative 5. So in other words, if they ask you this in your homework or quiz to give the coefficients and you put 2 and positive 5, it's wrong. It's a negative 5 is the coefficient of that second term. So you have to be careful there. And then part C, name the constant term of the expression. That's the 7 at the end. It's a plus 7, so it's a positive 7 as our constant term. So now let's look at this next expression. We have 3xy plus y minus 7x plus 6z plus 4. Big long expression. First of all, you need to see you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terms in the whole expression. And part A, we're going to call it part A again, is it says to name the variable terms of the expression. So that is going to be 3xy, just y, negative 7x, and 6z. Those are the ones that have variables, and those are the variable terms. Now, to name the coefficients of those terms, it would just be 3. And remember, in front of this y is a 1, so it would be positive 1. The next term, negative 7x, would be negative 7 and positive 6. And then part C, name the constant term, that would just be positive 4, that last term at the end. All right, so one of the main things that we're going to be looking at in this section is how to evaluate a variable expression. Basically, that's a fancy name for plug it in and work it out. Just like that old Glade commercial. Remember that? Plug it in, plug it in. Same thing. And no, I'm not singing anymore, no matter how much you beg me. So what you have to do here is you're going to substitute your variables. We're going to give you values. We're going to say, okay, A is 2, B is negative 3. Wherever you see an A, you plug in a 2. Wherever you see a B, you plug in a negative 3. And so whenever you put those in, make sure you put them in parentheses, okay? Then it's just an expression that you'll use the order of operations to simplify. Okay, so look at this first example. It says evaluate when x equals 3 and y equals negative 4. And then we have a note and just a reminder here. Variables placed next to each other indicate multiplication. So look at that. When you have the expression x squared minus 3xy, that 3xy, that is all multiplication. 3 times x times y. So first we have x squared. Well, x is 3 and y is negative 4. So I'm going to have 3 squared, because that's what x is, minus 3 times x, which is 3, times y, which is negative 4. So in your first step, all of the variables should be gone. They are all replaced with numbers. If you still have letters in that first step, you're not doing it right. Okay, so you need to make sure all the variables disappear and the numbers take their place. Now it's order of operations. Sorry about that. It keeps popping up. Hopefully it won't come up anymore. Order of operations. Remember your order of operations up here. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. So we're going to start with some parentheses here. Now mostly the parentheses are here to show the exponent and to show multiplication. So we're really starting with exponents. So 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9. And we can bring down everything else. Now, here we're going to do the multiplication. So there's a lot of different ways you can do this multiplication. One thing that I want you to start working on is taking the sign with the number behind it. So we're going to bring down 9. Now when we start to multiply, that is a subtraction sign, but it also means that the number behind it is a negative 3. So I have negative 3 times 3, which would be negative 9, still times negative 4, okay, because I did a negative times a positive, gave me a negative 9. Now, in my next step, I'm going to come up here. I have 9. That stays the same, that first 9. And now I'm going to multiply. And once again, take that sign with the 9. Negative 9 times negative 4. A negative times a negative is a positive 36. And now you just add, and what the heck is that? 45. Okay, and that's your answer. So whenever you're doing an evaluating problem with a variable expression, your final answer should always just be a plain old number. No variables involved. Okay? Number 2, evaluate when A is 5 and B is negative 3. So let's see, we have a fraction, okay, but on the top we're going to have, let's see, 5, that looks like an S, sorry about that, 5 squared plus negative 3 squared, and then on the bottom a plus b would be 5 plus negative 3. Okay, so we need to simplify the top and the bottom to where we can just get a simple fraction to see if we can divide it out. So on the top we're going to do our exponents. 5 squared, 5 times 5 is 25. Okay, and then plus negative 3 squared, a negative times a negative is a positive 9. So that's the top. And then on the bottom, 5 plus negative 3, remember you subtract, keep the bigger sign, so that would be 2. Now we need to simplify the top one more time. 25 plus 9 is 34 divided by 2 gives you a final answer of 17. So that would be it. Okay, number 3. So they just get a little bit longer, but it's still just plugging in numbers and using your order of operations. So here we want to evaluate when x is 2, y is -4, and z is -3. So we have x to the third. So we're going to plug in 2 to the third minus 2, and then we have x plus y. So that would be 2 plus -4 in the parentheses there, okay, plus z squared. So you want to put it in parentheses, -3 squared. So that's the expression we need to simplify. All right, so we've got some parentheses there that we need to work with. So put your order of operations up there to refer to. So I'm going to start with the 2 plus -4 in the parentheses there. So we'll bring down the exponent and the 2 on the outside. Now, 2 plus -4 gives me -2. And I have to keep that in parentheses to show multiplication between those 2's there. And plus -3 squared. So basically we've done the parentheses. Now we're down to exponents. So 2 to the third, remember that's 2 times 2 times 2. That's kind of my scratch work over there. That's going to give me 8, right? 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. Okay? Now, bring down the next 2 and the -2. -2 times -2. And we're still doing the exponents. A -3 times a -3 is a +9. All right, so we have subtraction, addition, or we have multiplication there in the middle. So we want to do that multiplication. So bring down the 8. Now take that sign with that first 2. So a -2 times a -2 is a +4. So by taking the sign with that 2, it saves you from having to do same change or keep change opposite later on. It simplifies your sign process, okay? It's going to make your life a lot easier. So that's how we got that +4 there. And if you just realize a -2 times -2, it changes that sign to a +4. Now it's just simple addition straight across. 8 plus 4 is 12, plus 9 gives me 21. All right, so number 4 here, it says evaluate when a is -2, c is -1, and d is 3. So we have d minus a, the whole thing squared. So let's see, d is 3 minus a -2, the whole thing in parentheses squared, minus 3 times -1, because c is -1. So it helps if you make the parentheses around the -2 a little bit smaller, because then you can kind of see that that's inside that big set of parentheses. So that's where we're going to start our order of operations, is we're going to start with 3 minus -2, just the operation in the parentheses. So the first thing I need to do is keep change opposite inside the parentheses there. Still keep the square on the outside, and bring down the rest of the problem. Now, so we did the 3 stayed the same. We changed the subtraction to addition, and the opposite of -2 is +2. So now I can add 3 plus 2 is 5 squared minus 3 times -1. Okay? So we have an exponent, subtraction, and multiplication. So we're going to do the exponent. 5 squared, 5 times 5 is 25. Now, here comes that part again with the signs. It is subtraction, but you want to keep it with the number so that we can multiply. So bring down the 25. Now, -3 times -1 is a +3, because a negative times a negative is a positive. And then 25 plus 3 gives you 28. All right, now look at this next one. I have given this exact problem on tests before, especially like as a kind of an extra credit type thing, and people run away because they see fractions. So don't be a weenie. Try the problem. Okay, it's not that bad. And you will have something similar to this on your homework and quiz. So let's see, we have to evaluate when a is -2, b is 4, c is -1, and d is 3. So we have fractions here. So when I have -3/4 times b, I'm going to put whatever b is over 1 because so I can multiply those fractions there. So we're going to have 4 over 1. Now, I know we have not dealt with fractions yet, but well, then we're going to keep it real simple for doing problems like this, just to get you kind of through these couple problems in your homework and quizzes on this section. So it won't be any crazy fraction stuff. So then we have 1/2, that comes down. Then we need to write a times c. So that's going to be -2 times -1, okay, plus b times d. So that's 4 times 3. And all of that is in those big parentheses there, okay? So we can start with, I'm going to go ahead and start with the multiplication with the -3/4 and the 4 over 1. And I'm also going to work the multiplication inside the parentheses. So first of all, a negative times a positive is going to give me a negative. And I'm just going to multiply across the top and across the bottom. So we're going to get -12 on top over 4. So we're not going to do any fancy canceling or anything like that. We're just going to multiply and keep it simple. All right, so we'll simplify the rest of that fraction in a minute. So bring down the 1/2. Now, in the parentheses, -2 times -1 is a +2, plus 4 times 3 is 12. So that's what we have in the parentheses, okay? So I can simplify this first fraction. -12 divided by 4 is just -3. And then we have 1/2. Now, 2 plus 12 is 14, and I'm going to put that 14 over 1 because I now have to multiply it by a fraction, by the 1/2. So the -3 comes down, and over here, we don't have to worry about any signs. We're going to just multiply across the top and across the bottom. So I get 14 over 2. So -3 still comes down, plus 14 divided by 2 is just 7. And then -3 plus 7 gives you +4. So even though this problem started with fractions, if you see a problem like this and you end up with a fraction answer, chances are you're probably wrong because this isn't a chapter so much on fractions. It's mostly on equations and variable expressions, things like that. So you're probably not going to end up with a fraction answer. So that's just kind of a way to double check what you're doing. Okay, so pause the video and try these problems on your own. I think there's 4 of them for you to try, okay? Number 1, evaluate when x equals -4 and y equals 2. So we have 2 times -4 times 2, that's all multiplication, plus y squared would be 2 squared, okay? So we have multiplication, addition, and the exponent. So we can go ahead and bring the multiplication down. And actually, if you wanted to go ahead and multiply those 3 numbers on this first step, that would be fine. You can do that because it's kind of its own little separate thing there. But we're going to do the exponent. 2 squared, 2 times 2 is 4. So now I'm going to multiply before I add. So I'm multiplying 2 times -4. That's -8 times 2. We'll do that in the next step. Plus 4. So now I'm going to do the last multiplication there. -8 times 2 is -16 plus 4 gives you -12 because you have to subtract, keep that bigger sign. All right, so number 2, evaluate when a is 2, b is 3, and c is -4. And we have this expression, b minus 2a, the whole thing squared, plus bc. So for b, we have 3 minus 2 times 2, all in that parentheses, squared, plus 3 times -4. That's b times c. Okay, so we want to start in the parentheses. So in the parentheses, we have 3, and if you take that subtraction sign with the 2, a -2 times 2 would be -4, which is actually what it would look like if you just kept the subtraction sign there. So it didn't make that much of a difference on this one. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and multiply 3 times -4 instead of just bringing all that stuff down over and over. So that's just -12. Okay, so we're still working in our parentheses. We need to do keep, change, opposite on that subtraction sign there. 3 minus 4 becomes 3 plus negative 4. Okay, still squared, plus negative 12. Okay, come up here, and so now 3 plus negative 4 in the parentheses, I subtract and keep the sign of the larger number, would be negative 1 squared plus negative 12. Okay, so now exponent or addition. Right, we have to do the exponent. A negative 1 times a negative 1 is going to give you a positive 1 plus negative 12. Subtract and keep the sign of the larger number would be negative 11. All right, number 3. Evaluate when A is 2, B is 3, and C is negative 4. We have BC divided by 2A. So notice how the 2A is in parentheses. You have to keep it that way. You can't just rewrite things because you don't like the way it looks. So make sure you follow the format of the expression we've given you. So we have 3 times negative 4, that's B times C, divided by 2 times 2. So keep those in parentheses, okay? So we have multiplication and we have division. So remember it says do multiplication and division as they occur left to right. Now, here's the tricky part. Some people would say, okay, we're going to multiply 3 times negative 4. That's negative 12. And then they would want to divide. But technically that's wrong because that 2a is in parentheses. So that's still on the very first step of the order of operations. So 2 times 2 is 4. So we have negative 12 divided by 4 would be negative 3. So be careful there, because if you went ahead and divided like 12 divided by 2, you get 6 times 2 would be totally wrong. So be careful. Make sure that you see those parentheses. That's that first step on your order of operations there. So that's why we had to do the 2 times 2 before we divided. All right, and I think this is the last one. We've got these lovely fractions you guys all love so much. Negative 4/5 times b. So b is 5, so I'm going to put 5 over 1 plus 1/3, and then we have a times c. Well, a is negative 2, c is negative 1, plus b times d, that would be 5 times 5. So that's in that big set of parentheses. So I'm going to start with the multiplication of fractions at the very front. A negative times a positive is going to be a negative, and we just multiply across the top and bottom. So we get 20 over 5 plus, bring down the 1/3. Now I want to multiply in my parentheses. So a negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. 5 times 5 is 25. Okay, so now I want to go back and simplify that fraction, the 20 over 5. Negative 20 divided by 5 is negative 4. Nice whole number, or at least a nice integer. So then we have 1/3, and we're going to finish up our fractions. I mean, not our fractions, our parentheses. 2 plus 25 is 27. I'm going to put that over 1 because I've got to multiply by a fraction there. All right, so let's come up here. And we have negative 4 stays the same. Now, if we multiply, we have 1 times 27 is 27 on top. 3 times 1 is 3 on the bottom. So I have negative 4 plus, now if I divide, I get 9. 27 divided by 3 gives me 9. And negative 4 plus 9, you get positive 5. And that should be it for section 2.1.